So now we'll just have a short explanation of, we talked earlier about Glad Tidings.
Yep.
And so this was initially, we did a program on a community radio station here in Tuggeranong in Canberra, and then we converted those to audio podcasts. So that was the predecessor to this YouTube channel, but we've decided to call it Ever Advancing Human Civilization now.
Yes. So those podcasts are available on YouTube.
Yeah.
So these are the ones, as Lynette mentioned, the audio we recorded on the radio station.
Mm-hmm.
Some basic topics we've already covered on those programs. So we'll refer to them as we do videos, if you're covering the same topics, or if you need more details on that.
And so some of the podcasts that we've already done cover these topics, and we will speak a little about each one, but they basically are education, marriage, drug addiction, and a youth year of service. So we'll introduce those topics now.
So the first one we're going to talk about is the Glad Tidings program we did on education.
Yeah.
So this was an episode where we discussed about the teachings of Baha'u'llah and Abdul-Baha and the need for universal education.
Exactly. So why do we need education, and what are the different types of education, including spiritual education?
So generally, we believe that education benefits mankind, but I'm going to play an excerpt on what the importance of education is. So here's an excerpt from the Glad Tidings episode on education.
And this is what Baha'u'llah says. He says, man is the supreme talisman. Now, talisman is something that attracts forces. It's like a magnetic force. So man is the supreme talisman. Lack of a proper education hath, however, deprived him of what he doth inherently possess. So without an education, you can't reach that state of sanctity and purity. He goes on to say, regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. So it sounds like what he's saying is that in our raw state, we're nothing. But because we've been invested with all these gems of inestimable value, what's going to help us make those gems shine is education.
Yes.
And it's interesting that he says that education will enable mankind to benefit from these gems.
So that was an excerpt on the episode we did on education.
And specifically on that quotation by Baha'u'llah about us being endowed with those gems of inestimable value.
Yes.
So there were three kinds of education that we can have.
Yeah. And that was also discussed in the episode.
In the program,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So the first of those kinds of education is material, and that relates to our bodies, to our health and our well-being. So we educate ourselves by what we eat, by looking after our health and just being material.
Yeah, and it's something that we share with the animal kingdom.
We share that with animals as well.
Yeah. And the next kind of education, which was also discussed in the episode, is a human education. So that's like governments and things like science, arts, crafts, basically anything to do with our human intelligence.
And this usually comes to us through schooling and university.
Yeah, universities, or being taught by parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what distinguishes man from the animal, because obviously animals don't have schools.
Yes.
And the third one is which was discussed in that short excerpt, is the spiritual or divine education, and that has to do with our spiritual health, the way we can provide service to humankind, the virtues that was talked about, and so how we become the recipient of divine blessings.
Yes.
And this is the true goal of humanity, and divine education is is of the kingdom of God. So this is what we actually are in great need of these days.
Exactly. And so if you want to hear that episode, I'll put a link again on that description. And the next episode that we're going to talk about is a Glad Tidings episode that we talked on drug addiction.
Right. Quite a sad discussion, really, but one that is, something that we need to talk about. Mm-hmm. And in this episode, we discussed drug addiction and its effects on not only on the person who is addicted, but also on the family. And we were very privileged to have a special guest with us for that episode, Michael Amon, who shared with us the loss of his brother through drugs.
So it is important as part of our material education to not put our bodies through unnecessary stress and addiction to harmful substances.
Yes, we often are not aware of the devastating effects this can have.
That's to us, yeah.
But Michael shared with us exactly what happened with his brother when he first used drugs as a way of fitting in with others, and maybe as a way of exploring life, but unfortunately it led to tragedy. This is an excerpt of what Michael said on that program.
So, we grew up together, we played together, and then once I started high school and then he started high school, we started finding our own ways, and I think he started hanging out with a crowd that, probably drank and started drugs a little bit earlier than the crowd that I was hanging out with. So usually it's the older sibling who was the example and gets into all the mess, and then the younger ones learn from those mistakes. Well, our family was a bit different because he got into the stuff before I did. And then, so I just saw what was happening to him. He'd start off, with alcohol, and then, then you go on to marijuana, and then it just kind of escalates from there. The gateways. So I saw what was happening with him. He was just, you could see the downward spiral, like even from that, I'm talking about between grades 7 and 9.
Wow.
Yeah, it
That's
was
very young.
Yeah, come from a small town.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of other things to do. I'm not using that as an excuse, but one bad decision made early on can have catastrophic effects later on in life. So it's just, whatever decision he made when he started taking his first drug, and it escalated. And then, there was, for the next several years, it was, he was just going down, and you could see it happening. He was just getting in more trouble, getting, really drunk at the shops, and then being brought home by police in a police car, I think, because he was passed out in the food court. When you're not quite 16 or 17,
that's a big worry.
Yeah, the whole family was worried, and then, but then, I went off to university, and we stayed and did his thing. Then a couple of years later, I moved to Australia with follow a girl down here and married her and stuff. And then talking to my parents, and then they tell me that my brother Chris admitted he's got a bit of a heroin addiction.
Wow.
And he admitted this to my parents, which meant that he recognized this is truly a problem. And he was actively trying to get help. But heroin's not a nice thing to get addicted to. You can't. Understatement of the year, but
it's hard to get off it, is it?
Yeah, it's very hard to get off.
So that was very sad.
It was really distressing, yes.
But it stressed the point how addictive drugs can have an effect on our bodies.
Absolutely. So we do need to take heed of that sort of those stories, and not allow that to harm us. And actually, in the Baha'i faith, the consumption of alcohol and harmful addictive drugs is forbidden, strictly forbidden, when they are not used as a prescription from a medical professional. And there's a quote from Baha'u'llah which we'd like to read, which actually sums up this the healthy life that we are meant to live. Would you like to read that?
Sure. Do not neglect medical treatment when it is necessary, but leave it off when health has been restored. treat disease with diet, by preference, refraining from the use of drugs. And if you find what is required in a single herb, do not resort to compound medicament. Abstain from drugs when the health is good, but administer them when necessary. So this was a letter that was written by Baha'u'llah to a physician at that time.
Right. So obviously we do have to take great care when we're utilising drugs, even if it's prescribed by a doctor.
That's right.
And again, there is a link to that episode on the website. Okay, so our next topic that we discussed was marriage. And we had two guest speakers in the studio for that podcast.
Yes.
They were Minu Hatami and Jamshid Hatami, who shared with us their knowledge and experience gained from many years of conducting marriage workshops and relationship counselling. We talked to them about the challenges faced by couples in a marriage and how they can overcome them. And we also talked about the Baha'i teachings on the institution of marriage.
So a summary is, marriage is unique to human beings on this planet. It is a union between two people who want to share their lives and raise a family. It is definitely an aspect of human life that distinguishes us from the animal kingdom. Therefore, to have a successful and happy marriage, the couple need to work at it, which can be said is a particular kind of human education.
Sure.
So Minu and Hatami explained to us these aspects and shared their knowledge. And here's an excerpt of what they said.
Baha'i writing gives a clear purpose for the institution of marriage and offers a wonderful solution for the problem of divorce. The purpose of marriage, as I can see in the Baha'i writing, is bringing up children who will remember God, and also for the husband and wife to support each other's spiritual growth. And together, this institution could contribute to the building of an ever-advancing civilization. And the core of this belief is that as humans, we are a spiritual being and having a physical body, that the physical body works as a temple for our soul. So there is a purpose for our life, and there is a purpose for our marriage as well. And the other analogy that I can use is thinking of marriage as a journey. For a journey, we need to have clear understanding on where we are going and what is our purpose. For example, if for this weekend, Jamshid and myself are going to Sydney, we need to be clear on why we are going. We know that we are going to see a musical there, and then deciding on either to go by plane or by car. And if you are going by car, then we need to have our GPS set so we don't get lost on the way, and have the necessary equipment or the necessary skills there. If the car gets, for example, we get a flat tire, then we are able to change it and know the basic of the driving and how the car functions. The same is for the marriage as well. We need to have a purpose in mind and what is the purpose of this marriage, and have the right knowledge and the skills to be able to adjust and work through it so it could successfully achieve its purpose.
Yes, that's an interesting analogy. Marriage is like a journey, a car journey. You have to have the right GPS coordinates in order to get to your destination.
It's definitely something we can all relate to.
Yeah, I think so.
So again, we'll put the link in the description below as well.
Excellent.
So the last Glad Tidings episode that we're going to talk about in this introduction is an episode we did on youth year of service. So in this episode, we discussed the youth year service that's common to Baha'i youth. Our guests, Parisa Tosef and Michaela Pelkowitz, share their experiences during their youth year of service.
Now, I guess you could say this is similar to a gap year that many young people take before going to university. But in this case, in the Baha'i faith, it is very common for Baha'i youth to take a year off to provide a service to humanity. They could go to one of the many houses of worship or to the Baha'i World Center in Israel to do what we call a youth year of service. And this is part of a kind of a spiritual education in a sense.
Yes.
So Parisa and Michaela were two youth currently living in Canberra who went to the Baha'i World Center for this youth year of service, and they shared their experiences of what they did when they were there, and this is a little bit of what they said. What's your understanding of a youth year of service?
It's a year where you just go away and do volunteer work. There are places throughout the world that this is possible.
Okay.
We went to Israel, but there are many other countries and places where it's possible, and it's done with youth. So I think it's ages 15 to 25. You're considered a youth.
Right.
Yeah.
And so most people, Parisa, you did this between school and university?
Yeah, my time was just after high school and just before university started. So.
And is this when most youth do it, do you think?
I think it varies for each person. People have different commitments. Some people want to start university earlier and then they take a year off and defer for a year. But I think most youth generally do it just before uni. It's a good time to lay a foundation of service, really.
Right. So can I also ask you, where did this idea come from? Do you know? And for you individually, was it something that your parents suggested, or did you want to do it anyway, or was it just expected of you to do it, Michaela?
Well, in my family, it was always talked about, and I always felt excited to do it. I actually didn't expect to do a year of service because I was swimming, but then it just happened.
So it was an unexpected surprise.
Yes, and it was a good surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. And for you, Parisa?
I think being a Baha'i, we always are brought up with this idea that we do service to our community or to others throughout our whole lives. But this exciting idea of being away for a year and really living in a community and dedicating a whole year of service was always very attractive to me from when I was young. So I think it was always an idea in my head, and so I made plans for it when I was in high school and just started building up ideas from then on. Yeah.
Very good. Excellent.
So that was Parisa and
Michaela.
Michaela.
And again, you can listen to that entire podcast by clicking on the link. So, in conclusion...
Just before we wrap up, Lynette.
Oh, yes.
Should we talk about this?
We've forgotten to tell you about this. Would you like a cup of tea?
Some of it. Yeah, well, I don't have a cup.
Open your mouth. I know this is called a samovar.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly. I thought could be Russian, could be Persian.
It's actually both. It's
Both?
Persian, Russian. But before we get on to that, it's something that we're kind of a tradition we're going to start with this video.
Yes.
Is that we're going to display in front of us when we do these videos an artifact, a cultural artifact from a particular area or a culture.
Yeah.
So this one is a samovar. So typically in the Iranian families, they prepare tea, where the boiling water is prepared in this section, and then they pour the tea in this little kettle, and they put it on top. As the steam comes out, it kind of prepares the tea as well.
It's a little bit how my coffee maker works, I think.
Yeah.
So.
This one actually doesn't work.
Oh, it does. Well,
it doesn't work.
It's not plugged in.
It's not plugged in. It's not plugged in. Well, we use the electric kettles, but yeah.
So it's mainly a decorative item for you.
Yeah, for us it's
moment.
decorative. But in the Iranian families, they use this to actually prepare tea.
Right. So the tea is in the top part.
That's right. Yeah.
And so what is it made of? It's metal, obviously.
This
Some
one
kind
is
of
metal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're mainly made out of metal. Yeah.
So do you have to polish it? Or does it
This
just
one I
stay like
haven't
that?
polished at all.
It looks beautiful. It looks golden, gorgeous.
So
Lovely.
if you have any cultural artifacts that you want us to display, please leave a comment below or leave a comment at our YouTube channel.
We could show it at the beginning and then you can have a guess what you think it might be, because it could be something quite weird.
Actually, that's a good one. We should ask them what
Yes,
it is.
yeah, that's right. So anyway, now you know it's a samovar. Excellent. All right, so just to wrap up a little bit,
Yep.
these series of monthly videos are going to be participatory in a way. We'd like to encourage you to leave your feedback. If you have any questions, leave your questions and comments in the comment section.
Also, if you want to get updates, you can subscribe to this channel. There is a subscribe button at underneath, I think, underneath the video.
Okay.
I'll also put a subscribe button at the end of the video.
And we'll also let you know that the next week's video is going to be on the topic of spirituality and the arts, and we'll have a very special guest.
Special guest.
Yes.
And live music.
And live music, as promised.
Yes. So just to wrap up, both of us, we truly believe in the teachings of Baha'u'llah. We believe that we can achieve peace and unity together.
Absolutely. Using the Baha'i teachings as
Exactly.
a guide. Yeah.
Using Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i teachings have given us the guide, and through working together and we can bring about a better tomorrow by uniting mankind.
Yes, that's our theme. Building a better tomorrow.
Building a
So
better tomorrow.
Join us.
Yes. So that's it for this episode. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Peace.
And goodwill. Goodbye.